What you just watched was a reenactment of what happened in the Trayvon Martin case. On February 26, 2012, Trayvon Martin was killed by George Zimmerman. This may not really be what happened, but this is how the media perceived it. The media had a field day with this. Not only does this have to do with gun laws, it also has to do with racism. This wasn't just an event that you see on TV or something in an old movie. This could happen in your very own neighborhood. Whether it be unbiased or biased, the media completely exploited this topic.
In my first article, I found that Time magazine, they published an article right after this happened, and it was very radical against George Zimmerman. It displayed Trayvon Martin as a 12-year-old in the magazine and showed that he was a very innocent child and talked about his childhood. In my second article, I found that Time magazine later came out with another article about a week later displaying both George Zimmerman after the fight and Trayvon Martin what he looked like at age 16. It showed that he was not the most innocent kid, and it showed him having multiple beatings on his nose and the back of his head. Also in the second article, it displays a topic saying that Trayvon Martin had THC in his system. It also says that George Zimmerman's quote was that Trayvon Martin tried to pull the gun away from his hand, but it showed no residue on his hands from the gunshot. In People, it also discusses that on the front cover that he is an unarmed 17-year-old child, but in the photo it looks as if he is 6 years old. And then on the top of the cover it shows in red and white letters Trayvon Martin's death. As you can see here, it shows Trayvon being a very young child and being very innocent. In most articles that I found, no matter what it was displayed to be extremely biased towards Trayvon Martin and his family, displaying him as an innocent, poor child who was innocently murdered.
Fox 35 aired a piece that was extremely biased against Trayvon Martin. There's literally a newscaster ranting about how Trayvon Martin is a hoodlum, now he's in the wrong place, in the wrong time, in the wrong neighborhood. Then they filmed a piece with George Zimmerman's father. He basically just defended George Zimmerman and said how Trayvon was a hoodlum and that all that George was doing his job.
The reason that Trayvon Martin is dead is not because he was black or because he wore a hoodie or because he was walking in the rain. It's because that 6'3" young man made a terrible decision and a bad judgment, and he decided to smack somebody in the face and break their nose, jump on them and smack their head into the ground, and in doing that put him in reasonable fear for his safety.
As you see here, this is extremely biased against Trayvon Martin. On the other hand, the O'Reilly Factor did a piece about how Trayvon Martin was extremely innocent, how he was unarmed, and how Zimmerman acted out of just pure hatred.
And breaking news tonight, the tragic shooting of an unarmed teen in Florida. Now, just moments ago, the Sanford City Commission passed a vote of no confidence in the police chief, Bill Lee. Now, this vote comes on the heat.
Extremely for Trayvon Martin. They call him an unarmed teen. In this piece, O'Reilly basically has no respect for Zimmerman. He calls him a neighborhood watch guy. The most in-depth piece I could find was with CNN's Anderson Cooper. He basically had a full-on interview with an eyewitness account of the Trayvon Martin case.
And one was still on top of the other?
Yeah.
Did you see the person being shot? Did you see the person that you now know as Trayvon Martin being shot?
Now see how in this video you see Trayvon Martin as a small child and he's riding a horse and looking very innocent? But you also see how Anderson Cooper is trying to pry the truth out of the eyewitness, but he kind of is just defending both sides. Pretty non-biased, I'd have to say. Though there are many parts of this interview that are for Trayvon and against Trayvon, I'd still have to say this is the most unbiased piece I could find. Anderson Cooper is basically trying to pry information out of this eyewitness, but he's saying a pretty unbiased story. and it seems the most realistic we could find. In all three of these pieces, the headlines and the script at the bottom of the video had a really big role on what the viewer had to see and how the viewer felt. They either made Trayvon look evil or they made Zimmerman look horrible.
Now, good morning, Emily.
Good morning.
In addition to this morning's news that we're hearing, the Orlando Sentinel also reported that Zimmerman told police he and Martin exchanged words before the teen punched him in the nose and began banging his head on the ground, and says he cried out for help. Martin's parents say their son made the pleas for help. Witness accounts differ, and 911 recordings are also not clear. And you wrote a piece yesterday that questions whether these new police accounts that we've heard in recent days can actually be trusted. Why is that?
You just heard a clip from Minnesota Public Radio explaining an unbiased opinion about what really happened the day Trayvon Martin was murdered. This clip was unbiased because it explains how the media perceived different other articles as biased and justifies each one.
And unfortunately, because, in my opinion, people were not patient with getting the results of an investigation that was going on at the time. Somebody tragically lost their life that night, and from what we know now that's been released, the police were very active in their investigation of exactly what had happened that night. But unfortunately, we jumped to conclusions at the time that the police department was not doing anything, to use the words of some. For example, Ben Jealous and the NAACP was doing nothing to investigate George, and that's unfortunate that people think that. It's more unfortunate that they jump to the conclusion that it is because either the police department or the state attorney's office or George or any combination of those were racist and were sweeping a murder under the rug for racist reasons. The truth is going to be revealed in court. You know, we have that system for that reason, for spreading truth in the right venue. But I think that there were some things that had to do very little with truth in the events of that night that kind of gave this story the impetus it needed to be spun and misdirected into this racial narrative.
Everyone's making this out to be a racial issue, but George Zimmerman's brother clearly states and explains how his brother was clearly not racist and tries to defend him in every way.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this isn't the first time. For me, it was just exacerbation, you know what I mean? It was just like, not again, you know? And I think it's time that we as a nation, you know, if we can gain anything from this, it should be a moment of introspection, and we should really have, you know, the kind of, the conversations that could really fix it. And I think we have to kind of look at ourselves and, you know, be able to admit, you know, our wrongs and celebrate our strides as a nation.
Okay. You just listened to ABC News radio station interviewing the rapper Q-Tip. Clearly, he's biased towards Trayvon Martin. Q-Tip thinks that we have completely failed the nation again because we all thought that racism ended once the civil rights movement happened, and now this is just America starting all over again.
The New York Times is biased towards Trayvon, focusing mostly on gun laws and racism. The article quotes that Florida's self-defense laws give people who feel threatened greater latitude in defending themselves than most states. It also states that it is a very low standard. This article quotes people like his father and his lawyer saying from his father, to be murdered by someone who weighs more than 100 pounds more than him, more than 10 years older than him, this is an outrage. USA Today was directly in favor of Zimmerman, quoting people from Mark O'Mara, who was Zimmerman's attorney, and Randy Reep, which was a criminal defense attorney. Reep is said to have thought Zimmerman's story has remained fairly constant. The article states that Zimmerman shot Martin in self-defense after being attacked. It quotes Mark O'Mara saying, it is a straightforward self-defense case. This newspaper article is unbiased because, unlike other articles, it doesn't just show him as an innocent little kid. It also shows him at his new age along with his younger picture. This image also shows the shirt that he was wearing on the night that he was killed and people marching for Trayvon's justice.